Hey everyone, sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute for the last few seconds. Apologies for that. Right, so before we go ahead, I hope everyone's able to hear me properly and see the screen. Please let me know if so. Um, we'll just go ahead and begin right away. Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. Right, now, to begin with, the first thing that we need to start looking at when we talk about any real life applications that we develop is using them in such a way that there are connectivities within different Python modules. And that's quite an important thing when we start working on it because each Python module we need to connect will have to perform some sort of tasks, and we need to interconnect some variables or objects. Like in case of our logger, logger is an object of loggeroo, and this object needs to be shared across multiple files in a real life application so that all these files will log in the same output file. That's the purpose. So let's do that. To understand how we can split across multiple files, I'm going to do one simple task. Remember, we have app.run here. Instead of creating the app here, I'm going to move this entire logic, entire code over to application layer. So simple logic. For the application to be created and run, I have moved the entire logic to controller.py. Only thing left in app.py is to run the application. But here's the problem. App is not available within app.py. App is available within controller.py. So controller.py is where we are importing Flask. It's where we are creating an object of Flask. It's where we are having the application route and the function. But only the running of application is in app.py. And I'll specify why. Remember, as we learned before, there is an application layer whenever we develop a real life application, real world application. This application.layer will have a file, let's say controller.py, and every request by the user will hit this controller.py, not app.py or not any other file. It should hit the controller.py. So all the app.root functions that exist must exist inside controller.py, nowhere else. Again, just to recap, this is because controller.py should be the one point of contact for any user. This will then contact other files for database connectivity and whatever else that might be. And we will connect to a database in our end as well, just to perform some basic operation at our end. We will be doing that. All right. So let's start with this. Let's start with this basic idea. Now, once we have our controller.py, any request made will connect to this, which means all the functions should be written here. All the app.route function should be written here. And that is why app is available here only. Now, if I want to run this application in app.py, however, I need to import this app from controller. So please observe this. Controller is a directory. Within this directory, we have a file called controller.py. Now, in Python, a directory in which we have Python files is often called a package. And these Python files which we get to work with are often called modules. So please just remember this to begin with. We have a package called controller within which we have a module called controller, and we need to access this module. So to do that, we have a simple way. Let's just remember where application.py is. Application.py is in the same directory level as controller. It's in the same directory level. Since it's in the same directory level, to import this controller, all I need to do is from the module, from the package controller, I need to import this particular module controller. And remember, I don't need to import entire controller. What I need within this controller is its variable called app. That is all I need. So from controller, I need to import only the app object. So to do this in a better way, what I can do here is from controller, remember controller is a package. Within that, I have this module.controller, module called controller. So we can access it as controller.controller. Remember, this is the module, the folder. In that folder, I'm accessing this package. Both are same name, hence it gets confusing. That's why I'm pointing this out. From this, we're gonna import only app. This is a common theme we're gonna use constantly, whether it's logging here, there, or whatever it might be. This is a very common theme that we're gonna constantly keep having. So let's take a look at that and um, see whether it works as expected. So all that we're going to do here is just make right here from controller.controller. I'm going to import app. That's it. So just to recap, this is our app.py. This is what we're going to run. To run this, it's going to go to controller module first. In controller module, whatever lines are there, it'll execute. Except for functions, every other line it'll execute. When it executes every other line, there's only two lines: import Flask and create an object of the Flask. This object of Flask that is that is created will be imported from controller over to app.py. When it's imported to app.py, we will run it here. This is how we can take a Flask application created in one module and run it in another module. And that's pretty much all that we are doing here. So let's begin with this. And one more thing I want to just point out, again, this is purely related to Flask applications. In Flask applications, if you set debug equals true, and if you rerun this application, anytime any change is made in this application, this app will automatically rerun so that you don't have to stop and run this app again. I'll just show you. Instead of dummy, I'll just write /real. Once I save this, you can see this app reloads automatically so that I don't have to reload this and try again. Let me make it dummy again and save it. It's automatically going to reload. This happens when you set debug equals true. This is purely for your local testing purposes because you will keep changing the code a lot in order to test. And once it is tested, when you take it to production level, please don't use debug equals true whatsoever. Anyway, with that idea, let's now move ahead. Now, let's add logging to our application so far. Again, please note, we have done nothing in the application so far, literally nothing. We just have created our own application. That is all. Now, let's start with this. First thing we're going to start with, first thing we're going to create and make here is the following. Let's add logging. Now, again, this is where we'll start looking at different directories that we're going to create. We have one of this, which is controller. Controller is a particular file or directory in which all our user accessible code is going to be there. We'll have another directory called config. Within config, I'll create a file called config.py. In this, we're going to create our logger object. The logger object that will be created in this config.py will be a common file, and this common file will be imported everywhere else to access. If controller needs to access the logger, it will import from config. If app.py needs to access logger, it'll import from here. If database repo.py needs to import it, it'll access from here. If service.py needs to access it, it'll access from here. Every single application that needs to access logger will import it from a common file. That's because we need to have only one logger object, one single logger object that will be created, and that should be accessible everywhere. That's our whole idea. So let's go ahead and try to create that. Let's create a new folder called config. In this folder, let's create a new file, config.py. In this file, I'm going to use from loguru. We're going to import logger. Let's start with this and let's work on this. Let's see how we can import this. We're going to set logger.add the file that's going to be info.log. This is the file that we will edit. This is the file that we will use for logging. And this is the logger object that we're going to import everywhere. So if you want to log something here, you're going to use from. Remember, one thing that all of us need to remember very, very carefully and very well is a log. One thing, whenever you want to import any file, one thing that you need to know, your current application is app.py. App.py is here in the root directory. Along with that, you have controller as a directory, and you also have config as a directory. Within config, you'll have config.py, and within controller, you'll have controller.py. Even if you're importing something in controller.py, you don't have to go back to controller, then config.py. No, you just have to go from config to config.py and import it to controller. And here's the reason why. The reason is you're going to execute, please remember, you're going to execute this file. Since this is the file which has app.run in it, this is the file which is going to perform this execution where it'll have app.run command. Any other function, any other import has to be done from the same directory level as app.py. Let's always remember this. Any import should not be done from this level or this level or this level or this level. Any import that we do has to be done from the same level as app.py because this is the uh, file that runs everything else. That's why here I'm not going to write, even though, please note, even though controller.py is here, I have to go to the previous directory, then go to config, then go to config.py. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to write here from config.config import logger. This is what I'll do. Even though controller is inside a different directory, this is what we do. So please remember that. So every time a person hits this dummy API, what I will do here is logger.info, and I'll just give a message saying that dummy API has been called. That's it. So this is exactly what we'll get to do. So we're just gonna call this and we're just gonna say dummy API has been called over here. That's all that we need to do. That's all that we need to know and remember here. Now let's run this endpoint and let's see if now you can see the difference. Previously it wasn't properly specified like this, but now it is properly specified as a JSON data. So there's a difference here. Now, your log file should also be created. And you can see here in controller.controller, within the function fun, you can see within the function fun, line number 12, you get a message saying dummy API has been called, and this is the date, time during which it is performed. This is how you can import logging from one file to every other file. We'll also import logging to app.py to say that app running has started. For example, we'll do the same here from config.config. Remember, config is a package. Within that package, we are accessing this config module. Of this config module, I need the object that's present here called logger. So import logger, done. Now I'm just going to write here logger.info, like app has started. And I'll just provide some additional info before and after it so that we can remember that we get to know where app has started. Now, if you take a look at info.log, you can see the moment I save this, the app will restart, which means we get the info app has started again. So all these sort of things can be added within log, and all these messages, every single message within logging is going to help you observe, identify, and understand where what is happening within your entire Python application. If there's an error, we log it. If there's some info, something user are doing, we log it. We log most important activities of a Python application so that we get to know what is working and what is not. And if everything's working, you can calculate more things based on